So, you want to be a World War II land army girl. It's tough, hard work, long days. Are you up for the task? The first Women's Land Army was created in 1917 to help with the demands of the World War I, the Great War. But by 1939, there was an estimated shortfall of about 50,000 agricultural workers, and therefore on the 1st of June of 1939, the Women's Land Army was reborn. So as usual, I'm going to ask you a question to see if you're suitable for the role. So first up, remind me again, how old are you? The joining age for the Women's Land Army was 17. However, there were people that forged their age and their parental signatures in order to get in a little bit early. And you might be thinking, why on earth would you want to do war work? Well, there are a few reasons. One, a woman's life in the 1940s and late 30s was monogamous. What you did is what your mother did before her mother did before her, etc., etc. Looking forward to a life of housework, raising children, being a wife. It was hard, it was boring, and you were unappreciated. And at 16, 17, looking at that life for the rest of your life might have been a little bit daunting. Also, some of these girls' current jobs just wasn't fulfilling. It was bar work, being a hairdresser, something that the girls didn't really aspire to be. They wanted out. Also, experience, life experience. At this age, 16, 17, 18, a lot of people decide, right, I'm going to go travelling. And that's what we do in this day and age. We go travelling or we go off to uni. But these girls, a third of them were from London or northern industrial towns. Some of them had never been to the countryside before. Imagine the experience. So it's like us going off travelling somewhere that we've never been before. To these girls, it was like that. Travelling, it's experience, it's seeing the world. But some of them had never been on a train before and never seen the countryside. This was a massive experience for them. And of course, one of the most obvious reasons why you'd sign up during a war, purpose. You got to think, these girls, brothers, male relatives are signing up for the war effort. They're signing off, they're going off to the front line and they're going to go and fight. And these girls are sat here like twiddling their thumbs. What am I meant to do? I want to help too. Here was their sense of purpose. Now be honest with me, you didn't sign up because of the posters, did you? Now you can go and look at the Women's Land Army advertising posters online and you can see how unrealistic they are. They're kind of cutesy, cuddling baby lambs thinking, oh, isn't that sweet and lovely? Hair done, barrel roll in, makeup done, full face, looking absolutely glamorous. The reality is a bit different. It's muddy, it's long days, long hours, absolutely exhausting, back-breaking work. Very, very unrealistic. However, it was thanks to these posters on the outbreak of war that 17,000 women enrolled. And in particular, one woman, when asked, how soon can you start? And she replied, give me 20 minutes. It was that unrealistic. They thought, wow, amazing, war work. This is incredible. Are you ready to take a pay cut? A rather big pay cut? So at the beginning, male agriculture workers got 38 shillings a week. The Women's Land Army girls got 28, so that's 10 less. There's a reason for it, I will come on to that later on. But if you worked in the city, you could earn up to 80 shillings a week. It is a massive pay cut, absolutely huge. As well as the fact that you've also got to pay about 14 shillings for boarding and food. Food, lodgings, 14 shillings, taken off your 28. Brilliant. That leaves you with hardly anything at all. Wages did slightly increase over the years. It still wasn't the best, and it wasn't the best war work to do for financial reasons. If you're doing it for financial reasons, you're in the wrong work. It did steadily increase. You did get overtime pay. However, there wasn't holiday pay, but occasionally you would get your travel fees paid for. If you have to go off training somewhere, you might get your travel paid for. Might. Now this is war work, so you're not worried about dying, are you? Now, you're working outside in fields, so the obvious threat is up there, up above, bombs coming down on you. You're working in open air, you're wearing green. You do stand out a little bit, and bombs did come down. as well as the fact they've also got the threats from machinery that you're working with anyway. A couple of the girls did die from problems with machinery going a bit wrong. It's dangerous work. And actually, it's quite funny, some girls put their tin hats, instead on their heads, they put them on their bums, because they spend so much time bending down, digging up crops and things. That's actually where the threat is most dangerous, on their bottom. And there are some very brave girls who, during open air fire and bombs and things, that they did carry on working. Most of them obviously stopped and took shelter, but some girls just thought, no, our country needs us, we are being starved by our enemy, we need food, and they carried on regardless. Very brave girls. Will you be strong enough to face the prejudice against you? Unfortunately, there is a lot of prejudice against these lovely ladies who work so hard for us. Male agricultural workers thought the idea of females doing men's jobs was ridiculous, and I'm actually going to read you a quote from a book that I will be recommending at the end because it's brilliant, but listen to this, it might shock you. Women can look after the chickens, but they cannot ditch. They can feed the pigs, but they cannot look after the boar. They can milk the cows, and if they have enough experience, which is not very often, they can attend to their calving, but they cannot look after the bull. They can drive a tractor with a hay sweep or hay mower, but they cannot pitch hay. They can drive a reaper and binder, but they cannot drive a big track-laying tractor. They cannot lay drains, they cannot cart or spread chalk, or spread dung or load it. They cannot pull swedes or marigolds or load them. In fact, they cannot do any heavy work on the farm, and there is not a great deal of light work. The idea of substituting women for men's work on the farm is absurd. That quote is what a male agricultural worker did say. Oh dear. You might think in 21st century that it is very harsh for men to say that, but there is a reason for it. Traditionally, in Britain anyway, farming had always been man's work. Women traditionally had done things like the kitchen herb garden or feeding pigs. They had never done any heavy farm work. It had always traditionally been done by men. It's different across the world, but here in Britain, that's how it was. So men having women come and do this work was absurd because it had never been done before. And if it's never been done before in hundreds of years, why should it be done now? What is the difference? However, it was a nice surprise that women found that they could do the work just as well, if not better. Some farmers actually over the years said, oh, my productivity has actually gone up with the use of female workers as opposed to male. Once they had the experience and had the knowledge and they were trained on what to do, as well as of course the fact of building up their strength to do very heavy manual work, they could do it just as well, if not better, than men. Yeah. You also face prejudice from the farmers' wives. If the farmer was married, his wife often got a little bit jealous because of course you're spending oodles and oodles of time with her husband. Some farmers' wives of course were absolutely fine, but some did get rather jealous. It's like you're stepping on her territory, you're stepping on her toes, so be careful. There is also prisoners of war working on the land. Quite a few were Italian, and prisoners of war were not employed by the farmers like the Women's Land Army girls were. They were employed by the government, and therefore they got better pay and better hours. Unfortunately, the Women's Land Army also faced prejudice from other war work services. So the Women's Land Army were on the hierarchy spectrum of the, war work services. They were right down of the pecking order, right down at the bottom. They were a labour force. There wasn't a hierarchy. You couldn't really rise up the ladder like you could in other areas. The highest that you could go was that you were kind of in charge of your girls, looking after their pay, etc. But that was really it. It was a labour force. Everyone did labour. And people from other services, for instance, the WWII, just an example, some of them thought, well, you can't be that intelligent because you're a labour force. You're not using your brain. So people thought that these girls were unintelligent. It's also such a shame that they faced prejudice and discrimination from shopkeepers. So these girls wanted to go in and buy their cigarettes, or they wanted to go in and buy their sweets, you know, this something on ration in which they could really look forward to after a hard day's work, and they were denied the purchase. Despite the fact that they are servicewomen, they were denied the purchase because they're on that lower status. One of the most important things, are you a hard worker? So traditionally it is a 48 to 50 hour week. However, during the summer months when the sun's out for longer, you will be out for longer. So you can start as early as 5 a.m. and finish at 11 p.m. It's hard work, it's tough, it's manual labour. So you could be down on your hands and knees picking sprouts. You could be spreading lime, and then suddenly wind changes, goes right in your face, eyes hurt, nosebleeds. Great. You could be with a great farmer who loves and appreciates you very much, but you could also be with a farmer who is a total nightmare, and he might expect you to, during the day, do his farming. By night, he might expect you to go and do his housework and look after his children, all for free. Some farmers just got the Women's Land Army girls to do jobs that they were too lazy to do. And of course, if you're new to the Women's Land Army, then expect to be right at the bottom of the pecking order and get the really dirty jobs like cleaning out stalls, etc. Some girls were even denied their food and drink breaks. It's hard. But the jobs certainly varied. You could be doing, you know, looking after animals one day, you could be planting seeds the next day, or you could be part of the Women's Land Army Timber Corps, where you're getting wood for telegraph poles. You could be getting wood for the pitches for the coal mines. Jobs can be very varied and might keep you a bit more entertained, but it's just such hard work. You will be knackered. You're a town girl. Will you be alright roughing it out in the sticks? So some girls had a brilliant time, and when they first joined in the late 1930s, they had a lovely farmer with a lovely family. They had all the home comforts they want. Some of these girls even married the farmer's son. It's an absolute dream, isn't it? It's like a little fairy tale. Most girls didn't get that though. Some did, most didn't. A lot of girls had farmers who weren't very nice. They had very little home comforts. At the beginning, they lived with the farmers, and in their spare room, which was a bit dingy, mouldy, cold. Some had mattresses full of fleas, some had their chamber pots with ice on them because there was no heating, no electricity. And also, these girls were far away from home. As I said previously, some of these had never been to the countryside before. Things like nipping to the shop or going to the cinema, it wasn't there. You know, that opportunity wasn't there for these girls. And depression for these girls hit in because of the loneliness. These girls were far away from home, they had no friends, and it's hard work. And when you're doing such hard work, you get so tired, your emotions just go everywhere. And these girls were knackered and they wanted a friend to confide in, but of course they were lonely, they were by themselves. Just the farmer, his wife and family. Oh, great. And things got so bad that billets were introduced, and billets were a great way for the girls to socialise because they were all together. They of course had to then cycle in or get the bus in, whatever, to the farm, but it was a way for these girls to socialise. And it was estimated that 22,000 girls, so about a third of these girls, lived in billets. The girls said it reminded them of boarding school. The billets were an extremely simple way of living. Bunk beds, there was a matron and a curfew, but it was uniting these girls, and they're fighting off depression, fighting off the loneliness, and a slightly better way to enjoy their war work experience. You're not too bothered about the uniform, are you? So of course the posters make the uniform look really glamorous. Green jumper, you know, Wellington boots, shorts, looking great. It wasn't that glamorous though, unfortunately. And a lot of girls didn't actually receive the full kit, or they did receive a full kit, but the quality was extremely poor. And this was very problematic for the Women's Land Army services because productivity, of course, will go down if you make your girls ill. So for instance, not providing girls with a full kit, for instance a coat during winter, might make the girls a bit cold when you're working out in open air fields. Also, not providing great quality Wellington boots, or as they call them, gum boots, during a rainstorm isn't going to help, is it? It's going to make the girls cold, come back with colds and flu. Brilliant. Some girls had a great time with their uniform. They had full kit, great quality, but not all the girls did, and it made them ill and poorly. And some girls actually went through their whole experience of the WLA without ever having the full kit. The services of the WLA were trying to encourage the girls to make do and mend. We know how important make do and mend was during the Second World War, and they wanted the Women's Land Army girls to come home after their extremely long day, and then they're completely knackered, to then go and fix a blouse or a jumper or trousers, etc. And these girls were like, no. However, they were replaced once they were completely knackered, which was fairly often. And you've got to remember how big this kit was, and the fact that the Women's Land Army wasn't a male version, wasn't a feminised version, sorry, of a male kit, like a lot of the other services were. This was a brand new kit, brand new designed, and it was absolutely huge. Now, do you like to party? So the Women's Land Army services had a little bit of a reputation for being sociable, and that's not a bad thing. I mean, not all of them were, okay? A lot of them were so knackered that at the end of the day, they didn't want to go out and party. They just went home, wrote some letters, read a book, and fell asleep. But some of them did like to party, and they did have a little bit of a reputation about them. And you've got to think, this is quite normal. These girls were, 16, 17, 18, in their prime of life, and they wanted to go out and have fun, and that's what they did. So in their billets, they got together and they put on makeup. They got out of their uniform and put on some, put on their glad rags sort of thing, or as best as they could, because of course it was a time of rationing. And they invited local men's services or services that were staying in the area, and they were like, oh yes, come over. So for instance, Americans, hi, come over to us, yay. And they had a bit of a party, food, drink, dancing. But the best parties, apparently according to these girls, were when the servicemen invited you over to them. So they would come and pick you up and then take you over. And apparently these were the better parties because they had the better alcohol. They had the better food, they had the better drink, better dancing, so much fun. But when they came and dropped you off home, matron apparently would be stood outside ready to sniff out sin. However, a few must have slipped through the net because there were a few whoopsie-daisy pregnancies. Whoops. But these were girls living for the moment. And when you spend your day and you've got bombs dropping down near you and you can just hear bangs and, you living from one day to the next on this kind of knife edge, not knowing if you're going to survive, living in that sort of way, why not? And finally, are you ready to fall in love with your work? So despite how dirty, monogamous, backbreaking it was, there was very few girls that actually quit the Women's Land Army. Most of them stick with it, and I can see why. I'm a country girl, and cup of tea, sit on a bank, watch the sunset, play with animals, just for a minute, it makes it all completely worth it. And I want to read you a poem that one Women's Land Army girl wrote about her experience in the WLA. War, which has brought to others fear, pain, sorrow, slavery and death, to me has brought what I hold dear, unlonged for but cannot possess, has given me wide stretch of sky, the sailing clouds, the wind's sharp breath, a roof of leaves, the wildflower's eye, bird song, all woodland loveliness, health, vigour, deep content and faith. That is its source of our stream runs clear. What have I done? I never meant to be a wartime profiteer. So there we go. Personally, I think I could work at the WLA It's my sort of thing. I am a country girl, however I would be very knackered and would moan all the time. Let me know how you'd get on in the comment section below. If you want to learn more about the WLA, then this is the book to go to. This is They Fought in the Fields of the Women's Land Army by Nicola Tyra. This book I requested from the publisher, which is a history press, and they very kindly sent me a copy, and I completely loved and adored it. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I loved it. The quote, the poem, was from this. It is amazing. It's 5 stars. This book is full of information from the manual that was first received from the girls, from primary source evidence. Nicola went and talked to some of the Women's Land Army girls themselves. It's packed full of information and pictures about the Women's Land Army, and it's a fascinating read. So if you want to learn more, go and get your hands on a copy. It'll be linked in the description bar below. So we have been a World War II Land Army girl. We've also been a suffragette, a bomb girl, a bright young thing of the 20s and 30s. What should we be next? Let me know in the comment section down below. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Take care, and I shall see you soon for the next one. Bye!